You're broken. That's why God won't give you a baby. My mother-in-law's words echoed through the dining room as my brother's wife showed off her ultrasound pictures. Everyone nodded in agreement while I sat there, clutching the secret that would destroy their smug celebration. My name is Caroline Mitchell, I'm 34 years old, and for 2 years, I've been hiding the truth about why I don't have children. A truth that's about to shatter everything they think they know about me. The Sunday family dinner at my parents' house in Charleston, South Carolina had become a weekly reminder of my supposed failure. Around the mahogany table sat the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. My mother Patricia, my father Robert, my younger brother Andrew, his wife Jessica who was 4 months pregnant, and my mother-in-law Linda, who had driven 3 hours from Columbia just to remind me of my shortcomings. My husband Mark sat beside me, his jaw clenched tight. He'd wanted to skip dinner tonight, but I had insisted on coming. After 2 years of these gatherings, something in me had shifted. I was no longer afraid of their judgment. "Caroline, honey," my mother said, her voice dripping with pity and disappointment. "Have you and Mark considered adoption? At your age, with your situation, maybe it's time to be realistic." My situation. The polite way of saying that at 34, after 5 years of marriage, my womb remained empty and therefore I remained incomplete in their eyes. "We've discussed our options," I said quietly. Mark's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. "Well, you'd better decide soon," Linda chimed in. "Jessica is giving us our first grandchild, thank God. Andrew knows how to fulfill his responsibilities." Andrew looked uncomfortable but didn't defend me. He never did. Growing up, we'd been close, but somewhere along the way, he learned that siding with the family meant siding against me. "Actually," Jessica said, her hand moving to her barely there bump, "we found out yesterday it's a boy. Andrew Robert Mitchell, after both grandfathers." The table erupted in celebration. Champagne was poured. Toasts were made. My mother hugged Jessica, something she hadn't done to me in years. I watched with detached fascination. What none of them knew was that while they celebrated this single pregnancy, I had been the silent architect of 47 others. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I sat, being called broken and selfish, while families across America were holding babies that existed because of my help. But I'd kept my charitable work completely private because I knew the moment my family discovered it, they would twist it or demand I stop wasting money on strangers. "Caroline hasn't touched her champagne," Linda observed, her eyes narrowing. "Are you perhaps?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm just not drinking tonight." The disappointment on her face was almost comical. "You know," my mother said, "when I was your age, I already had both of you." Women today are so focused on careers that they forget what matters. Family, legacy, grandchildren. I'd heard this speech a dozen times. The subtext was always the same. I was selfish for not sacrificing my choices to fulfill their expectations. What my mother didn't know was that I'd been working from home for 6 years precisely because it gave me flexibility to manage something far more important. My personal fulfillment included coordinating with surrogacy agencies, fertility clinics, and lawyers across 12 states. Reading hundreds of applications from desperate families. Making decisions about who would receive funding and watching their dreams come true from behind confidentiality agreements. But tonight was different. Tonight, I'd received an email that would change everything. The message had arrived at 9:47 that morning. Subject line: Hope and Family Foundation. Urgent response required. Dear Ms. Mitchell, we are honored to inform you that you have been selected as our Humanitarian of the Year for your unprecedented contributions to family building initiatives. Your sponsorship of 47 successful surrogacy arrangements, totaling $8.3 million in funding, represents the single largest private charitable contribution to reproductive assistance in our organization's history. The award ceremony will take place on November 15th and will be broadcast nationally. We require your presence and your story. 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks before the entire country knew what I'd been hiding. Earth to Caroline, Andrew's voice cut through my thoughts. Dad's asking if you want to host Christmas. I looked up to find everyone staring at me. Actually, I said slowly, I need to tell you all something. The table fell silent. Mark's hand tightened around mine. He knew what was coming. We'd discussed it this morning. He'd wanted me to wait, to tell them privately. But I was tired of gentle. In 3 weeks, I continued, I'm going to be on national television receiving an award. The Hope and Family Foundation has named me their Humanitarian of the Year. My mother's fork clattered. What are you talking about? For the past 2 years, I said, looking directly at Linda, I've been sponsoring surrogacy arrangements for families who can't afford them. 47 families. 47 babies who exist because I chose to help people facing the same judgment you've all heaped on me. The silence was absolute. That's impossible, my father said. Do you have any idea how much surrogacy costs? Where would you get that money? This was the part I'd been both dreading and anticipating. Remember Grandma Helen's investment portfolio? The one she left me when I was 25? My mother's face went pale. You didn't. I did. She left me $3.2 million in stocks and bonds. Everyone assumed I left it collecting dust. But I spent 9 years learning about investments, building that portfolio. I paused. That $3.2 million became $11.7 million. I've spent $8.3 million on surrogacy funding. Andrew's mouth fell open. Jessica looked faint. Linda's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. You spent $8 million on strangers? My mother whispered. On families, I corrected. On women being called broken. On couples who'd spent savings on failed IVF cycles. On people who desperately wanted children but couldn't afford the option that might work. But why? Linda's voice cracked. Why would you do that instead of using the money for yourself? You could have afforded the best fertility doctors. And there it was. The fundamental disconnect. Because I don't want children, I said, and the truth felt like a weightlifting. I never have. Mark and I made that choice before we married. But that's not something this family can accept, so you spent 2 years inventing medical problems to explain my choices. My mother stood abruptly. That's not true. We've been concerned, trying to help. Help? I laughed, the sound harder than intended. Mom, you've called me selfish at least 20 times this year. Linda suggested everything from hormone therapy to prayer circles. Dad told me last Christmas I was disappointing the family legacy. Andrew. I turned to my brother. You stayed silent while Jessica made comments about my empty womb at 3 gatherings. Andrew looked ashamed. Jess, you didn't. She did, Mark said quietly. And you let her. Every one of you made Caroline feel less than human because she made a choice you disagreed with. We just want what's best for her, my father said weakly. No, I said firmly. You want what's best for you. Grandchildren, bragging rights, seeing me conform. My happiness, my choices, my well-being, none of that has been part of the conversation. Jessica spoke for the first time. So you're rich and spending millions while letting us think you were struggling? I never let you think anything, I replied. You assumed. I have a comfortable life. Mark has his software engineering job. I do consulting from home. We live within our means. The portfolio was separate, and how I used it was my business. But now it's everyone's business, my mother said, panic in her voice. In 3 weeks, you'll be on a stage detailing what you've done. Everyone will know. Everyone in Charleston will see this. Yes, I said simply. But what will people think? Linda asked. Not, what an amazing thing, or, how many lives you've changed, but, what will people think? I don't care what people think, I said, meaning every word. I care that 47 families got to experience the joy you're celebrating with Jessica's pregnancy. I care that babies who might never have existed are here because someone helped. I care that I used my resources to make a real difference instead of sitting on money while people suffered. Mark stood up. I think we should go. Yes, I agreed, rising. As we gathered our things, my mother found her voice. Caroline, wait, we need to talk about this. As a family. I paused at the doorway. You've had 2 years to talk to me as family. You chose to judge instead. You chose assumptions over questions. You chose to call me broken instead of accepting I might be exactly who I chose to be. Where do we go from here? Andrew asked, sounding like my brother for the first time all evening. That's up to you, I said. The ceremony is November 15th at the Riverside Convention Center. I have tickets for family if anyone wants to come. If not, watch it on television. We left them sitting there, silent and stunned. As Mark and I drove away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: freedom. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. The Hope and Family Foundation prepared me for media attention, scheduled interviews, coordinated with their PR team. They sent profiles of families I'd helped, and I spent hours reading stories that brought me to tears. Marcus and Jennifer Chin from Portland, who'd spent 7 years trying for a baby. Their daughter Emma was now 18 months old. Sarah Williams, a single woman from Atlanta who couldn't carry a pregnancy. The twins I'd helped her bring into the world were 6 months old. The Garcia family in Phoenix, who'd lost hope after 3 failed IVF cycles and $80,000 in debt. Their son Diego was born 3 weeks ago. Each story reminded me why I'd started this journey. It wasn't about proving something to my family. It was about recognizing I had resources that could change lives and choosing to use them aligned with my values. Mark was my constant support. "I'm so proud of you," he said one night. "Not just for what you've done, but how you've handled your family." "I don't know if I handled them well," I admitted. "No," he interrupted. "You gave them 2 years to show you who they were. They showed you. Now they deal with the consequences." My phone had been quiet since dinner. No calls from my mother, no texts from Andrew, nothing from Linda. Silence seemed their response to information they couldn't process. But 4 days before the ceremony, Andrew finally called. "Hey," his voice was tentative. "Can we meet for coffee?" We met at a small cafe downtown. Andrew looked tired, like he hadn't been sleeping. "Jess has been upset," he said after we ordered. "She feels like you made us look bad." I stirred my coffee slowly. I didn't make anyone look any way. I simply told the truth about my life. "I know." He ran his hand through his hair, a childhood gesture. "I've been thinking about the past 2 years. About what we said, the assumptions we made. Caroline, I'm sorry." The apology caught me off guard. "Are you sorry because you realize you were wrong, or because everyone's going to know?" He flinched. "Both, honestly. When Mom told me about the broadcast, about her friends seeing it, I was embarrassed. Not of you, of us. Of me." "Andrew, let me finish," he said. "I spent yesterday reading about the foundation, about what you've been doing. There are entire online communities where recipient families talk about the angel donor. That's what they call you. They don't know your name, but they know someone changed their lives." I hadn't known about those communities. One woman wrote about being told she was selfish for wanting a baby when she couldn't carry one, Andrew continued, eyes wet. She talked about shame, judgment from her own family, feeling broken. Then she said, "Someone I'll never meet saw me as worthy of help. That gift wasn't just my daughter, it was my dignity back." He looked at me. "That could have been your story, Caroline. If you'd wanted children but couldn't have them, that judgment and shame, that's exactly what we would have put you through. That's what we've been putting you through anyway, just for making a different choice." "Yes," I said quietly. "I want to come to the ceremony," he said. "Not as an obligation, but because what you've done is genuinely incredible and I want to celebrate it with you." "What about Jessica?" He sighed. "She's still processing. She feels like you were keeping secrets, like maybe you thought you were better than us." "Andrew, I never thought that." "I know. But Jess has always been insecure about money. Her family struggled growing up, and finding out you've been this wealthy philanthropist while we've been pitying you, it's a lot for her." "I was never secretly wealthy," I corrected. "I had an inheritance I chose to invest responsibly." "There's a difference." "I know, but try to understand her perspective. She's been pitying you for 2 years. And whose fault is that?" The words came out harsher than intended, but I didn't take them back. Andrew nodded slowly. "Ours. We created a narrative about you and got angry when reality didn't match." We sat in silence, the cafe bustling around us. "I have 8 tickets for family," I said finally. "You and Jessica are welcome to 2, if she can handle being there." "And Mom and Dad?" "They haven't called." "They will," Andrew said. "Mom is planning a family meeting. Linda's involved, so I'm guessing it's more of an ambush." I wasn't surprised. My mother had never been good at accepting situations she couldn't control. The family meeting happened 2 days before the ceremony. My mother requested, demanded, that Mark and I come for a serious discussion. Mark wanted to refuse, but I agreed. I'd spent 2 years avoiding confrontation. Those days were over. When we arrived, I found not just my immediate family, but also my Aunt Dorothy, Uncle Jim, and Cousin Rachel. A full tribunal. This is ridiculous, Mark muttered. It's fine, I said. Let them say what they need to say. We settled into the living room. My mother perched on the edge of her chair, hands clasped tight. Linda sat beside her, equally tense. My father stood by the fireplace, assuming his patriarchal position. Caroline, my mother began, we're concerned about the message you're sending by going through with this ceremony. The message that I help people? I asked. The message that you value strangers over family, Linda interjected. $8 million that could have helped your own family, and you gave it away. I have met some of them, I said. The foundation arranged meetings, and my future is perfectly secure. My mother leaned forward. But what about children of your own? What happens when you change your mind and realize you've given away money that could have helped you? I'm not going to change my mind, Mom. Mark and I are happy. Why is that impossible to accept? People always say that, Aunt Dorothy chimed in, until they hit 40 and their biological clock runs out. Then you'll have regrets. I looked at my aunt and felt anger flash through me. Aunt Dorothy, you've known me my entire life. Have I ever expressed interest in having children? She hesitated. Well, no, but all little girls. I'm not a little girl. I'm a 34-year-old woman who has spent nearly a decade thinking carefully about what I want. I'm not confused. I'm not going through a phase. I made an informed choice, and I'm at peace with it. But this award, my father said, this public recognition, it's going to open you up to scrutiny. People will judge your choices. We're trying to protect you. No, Mark said firmly. You're trying to protect yourselves from embarrassment. Don't pretend this is about Caroline when it's about how this reflects on you. Silence. Then my cousin Rachel spoke up. I think what Caroline did is amazing. Everyone turned to stare at her. I mean it, Rachel continued, voice strengthening. She saw people suffering and used her resources to help them. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Isn't that what our faith teaches? To help those in need, to be generous, to show compassion? But family comes first, Linda insisted. Caroline's family hasn't been in need, Rachel pointed out. Everyone here is financially stable. No one was struggling with infertility and unable to afford help. She found people who actually needed assistance. How is that wrong? My mother opened her mouth, but Rachel wasn't finished. She stood up. And honestly, after listening to you all talk about Caroline for 2 years, the comments about her being selfish, the suggestion something was wrong with her, the constant pressure, I don't blame her for not telling you. Why would she share something important with people already convinced she was making bad choices? Rachel, Aunt Dorothy looked scandalized. No, Mom, someone needs to say it. Caroline has been patient and kind while this family has been cruel. She didn't owe anyone an explanation about her reproductive choices, and she definitely didn't owe anyone accounting of her inheritance. Grandma Helen left that money to Caroline specifically. It was her decision. I felt tears pricking at my eyes. I'd expected to fight alone. Having Rachel's support was unexpected and deeply moving. The ceremony is Thursday night, I said. I have tickets for anyone who wants to come. If not, that's your choice. But I'm going. I'm accepting this award, and I'm going to continue funding surrogacy arrangements because that's what I believe is right. What if we asked you not to? My mother said desperately. What if we asked you, as your family, to reconsider? I stood up, Mark beside me. Then I would say no. Because family isn't about obligation and control. It's about love and support and accepting each other. For 2 years, I've tried to be the daughter you wanted, quiet, apologetic, accepting your judgment. I'm done. This is who I am. This is what I believe in. And if you can't accept that, we don't have much of a relationship anyway. We left, and this time I didn't feel sad or guilty. I felt free. The night of the ceremony arrived cold and clear. Mark and I arrived at the Riverside Convention Center early. The Hope and Family Foundation had done an incredible job. The lobby displayed photos of babies, all children born through arrangements I'd funded. 47 smiling faces, each representing a fulfilled dream. I stood before those photos, reading the plaques. Emma Chen, born March 2023. The Williams twins, born July 2024. Diego Garcia, born October 2024. Each name was a story, a journey, a testament to what was possible. Ms. Mitchell? A young woman approached, holding a 3-month-old baby. I'm Jennifer Chen. This is Emma. My breath caught. She's beautiful, I managed. She exists because of you, Jennifer said, tears streaming. 7 years of trying, hoping, failing. We'd given up. Then we got the call we'd been selected. I just provided funding, I said. No, she said firmly. You gave us hope. You saw our application and decided we were worthy. Do you know what that means? I did. I'd read every application. I'd cried over stories of loss. I'd agonized over choosing who to help. More families arrived. The Garcias with newborn Diego. Sarah Williams with her twins. The Johnsons, the Patels, the Thompsons. People whose lives had intersected with mine. Caroline? Andrew's voice cut through. I turned to see my brother and Jessica approaching. Behind them, shockingly, were my parents. My mother wore her best dress. My father looked uncomfortable but was here. We came, my mother said simply, looking uncertain. We wanted to be here. I'm glad, I said, meaning it. The foundation director called everyone to seats. The ceremony was beginning. There were speeches about accessible family building options, about reproductive healthcare funding crises, about private philanthropy's impact. Video testimonials from families I'd helped, their stories more moving than any prepared speech. Then they called my name. Walking onto that stage, I was aware of cameras, audience, the weight of the moment. But mostly I was aware of the 47 photos in the lobby, the 47 families who'd trusted me with their dreams. The award was beautiful, a crystal sculpture catching lights and scattering rainbow prisms. But the real gift was what the foundation director said presenting it. Caroline Mitchell represents the best of what human compassion can achieve. She didn't seek recognition or demand gratitude. She simply saw a need and chose to meet it, quietly and consistently, for over 2 years. Through her generosity, 47 families have experienced the joy of parenthood. 47 children exist who might not have otherwise. And countless more families have hope, knowing people like Caroline are out there, willing to help. When it was time for my speech, I spoke from my heart. I didn't do this for recognition, I began. I did it because I could. I had resources others didn't, and I had the opportunity to make a real difference. Every family taught me something about resilience, about hope, about the incredible lengths people will go to for the chance to love a child. I paused, finding my family in the third row. My mother was crying. My father looked stunned. Andrew was smiling. I also did this because I know what it's like to be judged for reproductive choices. To have people assume they understand your life better than you do. To have your worth measured by willingness to conform. The families I helped were facing that same judgment, that same assumption that their desire for children was somehow less valid because they needed help. Every child born through this program is a testament to what's possible when we choose compassion over judgment, when we choose to help instead of criticize, when we recognize there are many paths to family and all are valid. The applause was thunderous. As I walked off stage, I was surrounded by families wanting to thank me, journalists wanting interviews, board members discussing future programs. But the moment that mattered most came later. My parents found me in a quiet corner. I was wrong, my mother said without preamble. About everything. About you, your choices, what matters. Caroline, I'm so sorry. My father nodded. We spent 2 years trying to force you into a box you never fit. We're ashamed. What you've done here, this is remarkable. Real legacy, real meaning. We were so focused on biological grandchildren that we missed the fact our daughter was literally creating families. I don't need you to understand my choice not to have children, I said carefully. But I need you to respect it. I need you to accept that Mark and I are happy, fulfilled, and complete as we are. We're learning, my mother said. It's hard to let go of expectations, but we're trying. The point is, my father continued, we'd like to be part of your life again. Not as critics or judges, but as parents who are proud of their daughter, even when she makes choices we don't fully understand. I'd like that too, I said. Linda approached then, uncomfortable. Caroline, I owe you an apology. What I said, calling you broken, that was cruel and wrong. I've been thinking about why, and I think I was projecting my own fears onto you. I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The next morning, I woke to discover the ceremony had been broadcast nationally, and response was overwhelming. My phone flooded with messages. The foundation's donation page received over $200,000 overnight. Media requested interviews, but the message that meant most came from a woman named Patricia in Kansas. I saw your story last night. I'm 42, childless by choice, and I've spent 15 years being told I'm selfish and broken. Watching you talk about choosing compassion over judgment made me feel seen for the first time. Thank you for showing that a woman's worth isn't measured by reproductive choices. Thank you for proving there are many ways to make a difference. You've inspired me to start a scholarship fund for social work students. If you can help 47 families build dreams, I can help a few students build theirs. That message, more than the award or recognition or even family reconciliation, confirmed I'd made the right choice. 6 months have passed. The foundation received enough donations to fund 12 more arrangements. 3 other wealthy donors came forward, inspired to use resources for similar programs. My relationship with my family is still a work in progress. My mother occasionally slips into old patterns but catches herself now. Linda has been making genuine efforts. Andrew and I are rebuilding our closeness. And Jessica gave birth to a healthy baby boy in March. When I visited them in the hospital, she pulled me aside. I've been thinking about what you said, she told me, about many ways to create family. I want Andrew Robert to grow up knowing his aunt didn't need children of her own to understand the value of family. I want him to know that compassion and generosity matter more than conforming to expectations. I held my nephew for the first time and felt something I hadn't expected: contentment. Not because I was holding a baby, but because Jessica's words meant she finally understood. My family was finally seeing me for who I truly was. As I looked at that tiny face, I thought about the 47 other babies whose lives had been made possible by a choice to help instead of judge. I thought about the families who'd been given hope when they had none left. I thought about the woman in Kansas starting her scholarship fund, inspired by a story about choosing your own path. My path had led me here, to this moment of acceptance, of validation, of understanding that real legacy isn't about biological children or conforming to expectations. It's about using your resources to make the world better, about choosing compassion over judgment, about standing firm in your choices even when everyone around you says you're wrong. The baby in my arms yawned and settled against me, and I smiled. This was enough. This moment, this acceptance, this knowledge that I'd made a difference in dozens of lives, this was more than enough. It was everything.